Welcome. So our topic for today is, it's HIDA / Mary Lou Falton Teachers College, Merging Art, Design, and Education. So we've today invited faculty from HIDA and MLFTC to discuss several different interdisciplinary research and writing collaborations that they've been involved with. And in particular, how these collaborations were initiated, how they were made possible. As Corinne said earlier, and we all know, we often encounter opportunities for collaboration that never really pan out. So we thought it would be great to hear a little bit more from this group about how they were able to sustain these collaborations, as well as the nature of the collaborations. So to introduce this session, Sandy Stoffer. Are you here, Sandy? I can't see you.
I don't think so, unless she's an iPhone. So
okay. So maybe Corinne, you could provide some of the background and context for this in terms of the events that event that you organized collaboratively last year to bring faculty together. And
it was actually, to take a trip back in time, it was way back in 2019, if you can believe it.
No, 20.
Yes.
Oh, but that's right. It was.
We had an in-person event to kick this off. We kind of called it a mixer. Sandy and Punya got together. I know HIDA is very used to doing these kind of collaborative seed grants between different units or different colleges. And so it was maybe more, I guess, our first time here at the Teachers College. And we invited from each college a selection of faculty that were maybe kind of already in spaces that we saw as lending themselves to kind of collaborating with one another. Again, you can't force collaboration, so there was some spontaneity involved, and that's what we'd love for you guys to talk about. But we did kind of select a smaller group. I think there's about 50 people way back in the day, again, when people were well used to coming to in-person events on campus. And we had an event for about an hour, I think maybe 2 hours, where we kind of had people introduce themselves, move seats, get to talk. And then 2 weeks after that, or maybe 3 weeks after that, their proposals were due. So it was a pretty quick turnaround process. And then, as everybody recalls, fast forward to March 2020, the world kind of shut down. But I think what was so incredible about this group of people here today, having managed our seed grant program at the Teachers College for years, they were actually the first cohort. Nobody needed an extension, which in the year of the pandemic is like mind-blowing. So people were still able to execute their projects, even given all that was going on in the world. So it was incredible. And as we know, some are still continuing on and have evolved and grown in size and in all regards. So I will love for Sandy to join in at the end if she can, and share any other ideas for how we could continue these types of collaborations going forward. But why don't we, Betty, if it's okay, kick it over to have the different folks. First, we're just going to have you introduce yourselves and share your overall research areas, and then we'll have you speak more specific to your project as we get going. I know Clark was running late, so Michelle, I'm going to have your group maybe go last. Why don't we have Eugene start? I think you're the only one from your group, but please kick us off.
Yeah, just me. So hi, I'm Eugene Judson. I'm a professor in the Teachers College. And you asked just for broadly our research areas. So it would be STEM education and educational policy.
Great, thank you. Mirka, let's go with your group. I believe you are all here, Mirka, Suren, and Nadia.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon. Mirka, Koro, I'm a professor of quality research. It's so fun to see all my collaborators also. Even there, yes. Hello. Nadia, you want to go next? Sure.
I'm Nadia Kellam. I'm in the Fulton Schools of Engineering and the Polytechnic School. And my research, I have a lot of different research areas, but primarily in engineering education. I've always been interested in engineering and the arts and sort of those intersections. And interested in institutional change and sort of power and privilege and the roles that they play on those types of teams. And then also using the arts sort of for research, so narrative research and that type of thing. And just to be brief, I'll pass it on to Suren.
Hi, yeah, I'm Suren Jayasuriya. I'm in the School of Arts, Media, and Engineering, and also Electrical, Computer, and Energy Engineering. My primary researches in computational imaging, computer vision, machine learning, so kind of like visual AI. But then I also have a strong component in STEAM education, so AI education. And in addition to this group with Mirka and Nadia, I also have a collaboration with Terry Kurtz from MLFTC for a NSF iTest project as well.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Michelle, let's go to your group. We have Clark introduce himself when he joins.
All right, great. I'll start. Michelle Jordan from the Mary Lou Falton Teachers College in the Learning Sciences, and also have a dual appointment with the School of Complex Adaptive Systems in the College of Global Futures. I do a lot of my work in K-12 engineering design contexts, and that is because I'm my research. My overarching research interests are in how people, particularly youth, engage in collaborative, creative projects. So how they design and build things together, bring things and new things into the world, and particularly how they navigate uncertainty that is a ubiquitous part of that kind of experience. So this is how I find myself in engineering design contexts, and really interested in engineering at the level of community-based projects, and interested in them as socio-technical or socio-political activity. And I will pass on to Evan.
Hi everyone, Evan Tobias. I'm over in the School of Music, Dance, and Theater and Music Learning and Teaching program, and my work is primarily around supporting teachers, support young people in terms of creativity and expression, and how music programs might reflect more closely the rapidly changing society, so helping people expand beyond the typical band, orchestra, choir models. And lately that's been involving a lot of imagination and futures thinking, intersecting with curricular inquiry and how that might play out in schools. And glad to be here.
All right, Ruth.
I thought I was just observing today as a participant.
Well,
but
I'm putting you on the spot now that I see you, and you're part of that group, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, but I was going to like chime in at the end about how really like everyone else did all the work on that. And I was going to say, because of the pandemic, how like what a great effort. I remember having calls with Michelle like in my home office before it was really a home office, and it was like, how are we still going to do this? So I was, yeah, but I appreciated the opportunity, and it was fun to get together.
Awesome. I think there are a few other people that were on your teams here too. If anybody else wants to call, like Danielle, I recognize your name. Were you, maybe not, maybe were you on one of the teams? Maybe not. Otherwise, Sandy, I know you just joined. That's my issue. Danielle's like, no, don't call on me. I see so many.
No, I wasn't on one of the teams. I'm just here to find out the fantastic stuff that was done.
Okay, well, thank you. Sorry for that. Sandy, we got started, but if you want to add any more context before we dive into the actual projects and how the collaborations came to be.
Yes, thanks. And I apologize for being late. I was at a how to do promotion and tenure meeting, and people had questions. So, we're excited. The Herberger Institute likes to form partnerships with other colleges, and the Teachers College has been one of our best partners. We're excited to provide opportunities for seed grants. I think when we did a live version of this where people shared their research and their interests, and we couldn't get people to stop talking. It was just so exciting. In the Herberger Institute are a lot of teaching and teacher education programs, so it's a natural fit. And there's also a lot of creative collaboration as well. So we're excited and hopeful and happy that these collaborations exist, and we hope we can do more of them, because we're finding that the impact is great and the success rate is great. So let's go for it.
Go ahead, Betty.
Thanks so much, Sandy. Yes, I hope we can do more of these. That's on our agenda for the next, I don't know, semester, 2 semesters. So thank you. And I should just tell everyone the format. So we've prepared a few broad questions for the folks here, but we really love it when everyone contributes questions or comments. So I'd like to encourage everyone, if you've got a question or want to add something, please put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll make sure to try to include those in the conversation. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the first things we thought we'd start the group or ask the groups to talk about is, so how did this work? We heard a little bit about the event and the opportunity to sort of meet and greet and share, share ideas and find common interests. But what enabled your group to actually follow through on your collaboration? If you've got some thoughts about that. And should I call on someone, or would someone like to jump in? Anyone?
I don't mind jumping in.
Great, thanks, Michelle.
For the so our group was we were called the Weight of Light, Youth Weight of Light. And what we were doing was trying to engage youth in futures thinking about the energy futures of their own communities. So localizing futures narratives in a using multiple modes, multimedias, and multiple disciplines. So I would, and I think maybe Evan, Ruth, and Clark might be able to characterize, might be able to add and characterize that better. One of the things I just put in the chat, the link to a book project called The Weight of Light, a collection of solar energy futures that was the inspiration for our project. This is a project that Clark Miller co-developed and co-led with colleagues, including Ruth Wiley at the Center for Science and the Imagination. And so with that long intro, I just I'll say that I think one of the things that allowed our team to work is that we were connected with each other before this project, and not all of us together, but many of us in some way had some links to each other, were familiar with each other's work, had done small projects with each other, even funded or unfunded, and including trying for funding that we were not successful with in various configurations of us. So I think one of the things that really made us work is that we had these linkages through which we were able to start this new start and sustain this new conversation. Evan, Ruth, if Clark is here, I'll maybe you all could join in. I want to, and before you do though, I'm going to put one more link there. This is the project that Ruth and I collaborated on with a couple of practitioners, a middle school student and a high school teacher, and a couple other collaborators. And I put it out there as an example of small projects that have kind of linked us across time.
Sure. I just threw a link also, a little information on the project that we were working on together. To Michelle's point, we had these kinds of, Michelle and Steve had worked closely together. Michelle and I had kind of worked together on a grant project, and I hadn't worked closely with Steve. I had met him at a conference, and the mixer provided the opportunity for us to all kind of reconnect and come together on a new project. And then meeting weekly, even through the pandemic, we already had some of those built-in relationships, but I think we were able to kind of hit the ground running and not have to like negotiate some of the getting to know you kinds of stuff that might happen sometimes at the beginning, which was nice, but we were moving in new directions together. And the other thing that I think was interesting was a merging of networks. So each of us kind of brought to the project our own sort of communities and networks that we were connecting together that I think helped propel the project and find sites very quickly and collaborators very quickly, which was really nice. And it was out of like trust and generosity that I think that was able to happen, where we can kind of move quickly on that. So that was really helpful as well. So, and I'll pass it over to Clark if he wants to say something as well, or Ruth.
I'm not sure if Clark is here unless he's the iPhone. He was
Yeah,
coming.
it's just connecting now. Yeah.
Ruth, did you want to add anything to that?
I think the only short thing to pick up on what you said, Claren, about that many of these or all these projects didn't need any extensions is that at least for this one, it was really building off of existing work. It was a new idea and a new collaboration, but as Michelle mentioned, it was building off of other things in terms of other resources. And so I think in terms of starting a new collaboration, that's helpful. You're not starting everything from scratch, but you're introducing new things, and then those new things will inspire other new things.
Very cool. Let's go over to Mirka, your group. Did you guys know each other ahead of time, or had you had networks already together like this first group?
Yeah, me and Nadia, we had a past through NSF and some of our collaborators in Florida. And that's how I was kind of pulled in, if I recall. So our project has been also kind of long-term, and it's still under works. But it has been a really fab. And I think one thing that also connected us was this kind of really strong commitment to doctoral students and their role in the project, and mentoring them in different ways, which was really important.
Yeah, I think I can add that, like, actually maybe the glue for our project was a doctoral student who Madeline Jennings, or M as they go by. So they were interested in education and engineering, but they also had interest in philosophy, and also some emerging interest in AI and human computer interaction. And so they really kind of like me and Nadia are the co-advisors for their doctoral thesis, but they really wanted to branch out into these new areas. And so that, as a result, we were, just as a background for a project, we were looking at like Foucauldian concepts of care of the self and power. And we were conducting interviews with members of the LGBTQIA plus community, or GRSM, and we had them interact with an AI art making tool. And, that enabled like a kind of an interesting space to have conversations. And we're still kind of, we published some preliminary results, and we're still, actually, it's such a long project. We're still working on the journal or the long form papers that, taking time. And I'll also add, like, we did submit some grants. We actually got rejected twice from the NSF. So we're still trying to figure out like where we could reposition it, or kind of like where we can maybe salvage some parts to submit again. So yeah, and so I guess like how we came together was a bit through this project was, I had been working with Nadia from before from another NSF project, and then Nadia knew Mirka, and so that's how we kind of coalesced the group.
Yeah, and just to mention, it was another doctoral student, I think also that, or Mirka and I had connected, but then Josh Cruz I had also worked with. And so there's a lot of graduate students that are sort of bringing us together in different ways, which is kind of interesting. Maybe they're doing better at working in these interdisciplinary spaces.
Very cool. Yeah. Let's see, who else do we, well, Eugene, you don't have a partner here. Do you want to say a little bit about yours?
Yeah, before I talk, though, I do have somebody else from the team I didn't see on the Zoom window. So Maseret, Dr. Lou, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you here. I'm Maseret Tailu. I'm a fourth-year assistant professor in the higher and post-secondary education program here in the Teachers College, and my work centers around retaining minoritized women in STEM pathways. And I work with Eugene on a really great NSF-funded project about STEM aspirations amongst refugee youth and their families.
Yeah, so I think earlier the question was like, how did we begin this collaboration? So unlike some others, we did start from scratch. That mixer in 2019, I went there seeking people out. because I already had the beginnings of some ideas for a project proposal, and met somebody at the mixer, met in their office afterwards, and thought this is going to be a really bad fit. So I then went through profiles of people within HIDA, now the Sidney Poitier New American Film School, and found Philip Klusaritz. And because I was looking for somebody who would be interested in underrepresented groups, and also maybe had a slant towards STEM education. And Philip has his degree in civil engineering and is a filmmaker. And so he's been awesome. So within, as far as the collaboration, we are actually, this project brings together 7 different colleges, schools, and Philip is our big representer from HIDA, from Sidney Poitier. I don't know. I don't remember as far as what else, as far as questions I'm answering here.
Can you say a little bit more about the project?
Yeah, so we started with the seed grant, and we then went right to our grant proposal. So we were able to receive an award from the NSF that brings together different ethnic community-based organizations, ECBOs, sometimes informally referred to as refugee organizations. So we work with the local communities of Burundians, Congolese, Syrians, and Somalis. And the idea is that parents and students who are in grades 7 through 12 participate together in a series of adapted American Dream Academy workshops on Saturdays. And so that's an ASU program that the community leaders become the main facilitators of, and it focuses on things like admissions and scholarships, how to graduate from high school successfully. And then we also bring in STEM career activities. So, but the idea that we're trying to actually represent a breadth of different careers. And where the collaboration comes in is that Philip has been busy developing role model videos. So using people who themselves have refugee backgrounds and are local and have STEM careers. He's created so far 2 really excellent mini movies, about 6.5 minutes long, and he's casting for the 3rd one now. And those movies get integrated back into our Saturday workshops, and the community leaders lead discussions on that. Aside from that, that's our big core thing on those Saturday workshops. There are other pieces that the families can participate in, including field trips to the campus. The students can elect to apply to have an e-mentor, also typically somebody from their community. And we provide support for that. And then there's also an optional summer digital storytelling workshop. So it's a lot. I barely keep it in my head at any given time.
It is a lot. And I just want to add, I dropped the link in the chat. What you didn't mention, because you're so modest, Eugene, was that your guys' work was receive the President's Award for Social Embeddedness. So that is a really cool little video that gives a slight overview to some of the things Eugene just spoke of. So save that for later to watch, but and congratulations, Eugene.
Thanks. And I just put the links to the 2 videos that we've created.
Awesome. Well, I think that's really interesting among the 3 different projects, because the collaborations came about in 3 very different ways. We have people who already knew each other from multiple networks that had a different reason to kind of come with a clean slate and think about something new. We had another group who had some overlapping graduate students, but 2 of you had worked together. So then the 3 of you got connected, plus Clark is here. So I'll let him chime in here in 1 more minute. And then Eugene, you came and tried to make a connection, didn't work out, and then went to your own means of going through the directory, which I think is probably a very painful process, but I'm glad that that worked out very well for you. Clark, I know you just ran in joining from another meeting, but if you want to please introduce yourself and add about your role, how you kind of got connected with your group. That's what we were having folks share.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And first of all, I apologize. I was in class, so And of course, it was exciting and lots of learning was happening, so it ran over. You know how things go. I'm Clark Miller. I'm the director of the Center for Energy and Society here at ASU, and we are we do a lot of things related to humanities and social sciences engagement around the energy system, and especially around the transition to clean energy here in the center. And we have, yeah, wow, how did we all get connected in this project, and how did I get connected in has been a long story, but I met Michelle as part of a engineering research center on solar energy that she was running the education programs for, and I was leading the sustainability and social science research teams for thinking about what was called the terawatt challenge, which is how do we possibly get to a terawatt of solar energy around the world. It turns out we just did that, but when we started in 2010, it was a long ways away, and we probably need several hundred terawatts by the time we're done worldwide. So it was a long way to go, and the engineers were really focused on how do we get the right solar panel with the right devices, and you know, Michelle and I were part of a group within the center, and this was 8 universities across the country, partners in international universities, companies, all working together to try to think about the future of solar energy. And there was a small group of us that were like, well, this is interesting to think about the insides of the solar panels, but nobody really cares about the insides of the solar panels. And so for us, the question was, how do we put a terawatt worth of solar panels down in the world? Like, where do they go? Who owns them? Who gets to decide these questions? And who gets the benefits of this green energy? And so Michelle and I started talking about that. We started thinking that this is a really important question. And so we got connected up with the Center for Science and the Imagination, Ruth Wiley and Joey Eschrich and Ed Finn, and they said, well, we have some people who like to write science fiction and think about the future. How about we bring together some engineers, some social scientists? And so we went forward and produced the book that Michelle shared the link to, and we've subsequently produced a second one. So, and then, you know, we got connected with some other folks who do education, because the whole point is not to produce a book, but rather to create materials that help people think about the future, potential futures, pathways to the future of solar energy, so that we can make good choices as a society. So that means we got to figure out, how do we get these ideas, these materials out into the world? Michelle's group was great for doing that. We've now got a little grant from the EarthShare Foundation to bring in some educational fellows to turn the stories into educational materials for public media, K through 12, science museums, and adult learning, senior learning groups. And the idea is to help all the people of Arizona learn more about what solar energy might mean for the future of the state.
Very cool, Clark. Thanks so much. And it just strikes me too that one of the things about these collaborations that's really fabulous are the different forms of dissemination, you know, the different kind of products and media that you're creating, which I'm sure is a direct result of our folks, Mary Lou Falton Teachers College folks collaborating with HIDA. So thanks. So before Clarin and I ask another question, all the rest of you here, do you have questions or comments or topics you'd like to bring up? Please feel free. Just jump right in. Or not.
I'd love to hear about if we can continue finding seed grant funding for partnerships or projects. What kinds of things or potential ideas are interesting to you that you might see someone in Herberger and the Teachers College collaborating together?
Nobody has ideas. They've done it all.
Or perhaps it's hard to know until we all get to know each other.
Well,
Yeah, I
while
think
we-
that might
oh,
be
go ahead,
right.
Michelle.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that might be right. That when we walked into that room, I didn't have, in that first gathering, I didn't have an idea, not a very well developed idea, and the idea really grew out of that interaction, which is what's so powerful about that kind of convening, I think. And it's not that I ended up there on accident either, right? So I actually, when I was describing my research interest at the beginning of this session, they actually started when I was an elementary school music teacher, and I did a lot of collaborative musical composition with my students. And that was actually my first love, and the thing that got me interested in collaborative creativity and the negotiation of uncertainty in those spaces. So this is a part of how I ended up in that room, is that the possibility of reconnecting with that linkage to the arts that I haven't done for a very long time. So it was really grateful to have that opportunity. So it's not random, but it's also really grows out of conversation. Whoever's in the room gets to shape the possibilities there.
We also, and if Punya were here, he could speak more to it, but we had, so through the actual seed process, I believe we received like 8 or 9 proposals, and 4 projects were ultimately selected. But I think there's even there was one group of faculty who their project wasn't funded, but they still decided to work together to kind of continue developing their idea, because I think that was the main feedback in their proposal process, with some questions about the design of their research. And then there was a third group who connected that day at the mixer, who didn't ultimately submit a proposal, but I know they've published articles together. So I would be curious too to hear from the folks here, like who's still working together, even if your project has morphed or grown. But have you also started working on things that are new and different that weren't even a part of your original seed grant project? Anybody wants to chime in with those?
We've talked about new ideas to pursue. It hasn't been quite so much time to start on something brand new, but as far as looking at the videos and how those can be used, or how curriculum can be used to support the videos, and they're used far beyond our project. We actually kind of look at the videos as being what may be the legacy of our project.
I mean, in our
Yeah.
case, the seed grant actually was sort of the next project, right? And so we had gotten effectively a seed grant from a different project, worked together, done some stuff, and then we wanted to do more, and we wanted to, and the seed grant was an opportunity to go in a different direction, bring in some new people, try some new things.
I think for us, like probably the time scale, like we're still we collected a lot of data with the seed grant, but it turned out like we thought we'd finish the analysis in 3 months, and then like it's been like almost a year and a half later, and we're still we've still only really analyzed like half the data. So we actually and that's partly because of our methods of analysis are very labor intensive and very detailed. And so and also because of just the timeline of submitting papers, getting feedback or submitting grants and waiting 6 months before revising, like it definitely extends beyond the seed grant timeline in that case.
Yeah, I probably should have added some clarification. I made it sound too clean and easy when I said nobody asked for an extension. That just meant that you were able to expend the funds within the 12 months you were given, but we obviously know that the work takes much, much longer, and publications and data analysis, et cetera. So that makes sense, Suren. Thank you for that. Anybody else want to speak to that?
I think it's
that-
just an, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that from my perspective, what is really fabulous about these interdisciplinary collaborations is that organic exchange of thoughts and practices and discourses and students and materiality and all that stuff. It is just so stimulating. I think that these kind of collaborations are one of the best parts of my academic career. I really cherish them. So thank you all.
150%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would co-sign that as well in working with Michelle, Steve, Clark, and thinking in those ways and really stretching my thinking, and more recently working with Mirka on a completely separate project that didn't come out of this Seed Grant initiative. And it just keeps you on your toes, and it's just so nourishing to like have these other ways of thinking around. So absolutely love the interdisciplinary aspect of these projects.
I was just gonna say that's sort of the nature of the game with these collaborations is change. You know, we think about where we were in 2019, and I remember the mixer, but to now, you know, like there's, I don't know, a lot has happened since then, you know, in our world, and there's a lot that I think these collaborations between the arts and education can really bring to the forefront. You know, things that maybe education alone can't answer. You know, and when we think about power and privilege and inclusion and social justice and these types of things, I think we need these collaborations and partnerships to really start to make headway. If we keep working in our own little silos, we're not going to do a lot. So I think to the question about new ideas, I think there are tons of them. I think that's why we were speechless, because there, you know, we could sit down, we could come up with tons and tons and tons of ideas for new collaborations and new projects moving forward. But I think this is needed even more now than it was even back in 2019.
Go ahead, Betty.
So I was going to say, or ask the group if you have any tips or suggestions for other folks who are interested in collaboration. And I also have a side question, which may or may not be relevant, which has to do with sort of our university rewards system and the extent to which you felt that this work is not only rewarding to you personally, but is rewarded and perceived as valuable in the college and the university. So feel free to answer either or neither question.
It's an important question. I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer it because I don't have a lot of time for university reward systems. It's partly why I'm at ASU. I will say that I think these kinds of collaborations have been some of the most important work that I've done, whether that got rewarded or not. But fortunately, I think in our school, at least my school, which is in the College of Global Futures now, we've been able to put together reward systems that incorporate questions of importance and significance of the work beyond academia, and not just to focus on, what shows up on the CV. And I actually think that's one of the things that makes the projects work when they work really well, because why else would you collaborate with someone from a different discipline and a different department, if not because the project has some significance, right, beyond your little disciplinary boundaries. So Yeah, I mean, it is an important question. It's one that we've certainly struggled with to get our reward system reconfigured. I would encourage all of you to take that step and do that reconfiguration within your schools, because I think it really does open up freedom for the faculty and students to tackle more relevant, more impactful, more exciting projects, and that has value for society as well as for the university.
Thanks, Clark. Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't necessarily suggesting that we don't value collaboration. I think we actually do it, although there's what we give lip service to, and then there's what people actually feel is valued. So I was wondering if there was any discrepancy, but I'm probably too interested in that from more of kind of a leadership perspective anyway. So
I would say that
From
it
my-
makes a difference.
Go ahead, Evan, sorry.
I was just going to say that I think it makes a difference when there's a seed grant attached to it, because I think back to like when prior to tenure, if I were making the decision of like, do I move stuff forward that I know is going to move forward, or do I have lots of conversations that may possibly lead to something but might not be speedily leading to something? When there's a seed grant attached to it, you know that I can get some doc students to help us out. We can have a program manager, we can have a research assistant, we can do these things, and you have the funding to move it forward sort of immediately, which I think factored in some of the decision making I was making prior to tenure and then post tenure where I had more time. And so thankful to the institutional support in that way, which goes beyond this is a good thing to do, to like, here's the actual infrastructure to support you doing it, kind of a thing. So that's helpful. And then I also think about in the collaborative work, there's sort of like things that speed things up and things that slow things down, right? Because you have the coming together and coordinating meetings and figuring out what's going to be compromised, what's going to be consensus based, which can slow things down. But then you have distribution of efforts, and you do this and I'll do this, that speeds things up. And there's sort of like a convergence and divergence of that, which I don't know what that means for encouraging people or not encouraging people to do, but I think it's both a helpful thing to know that like there will be these moments where like things feel like they're accelerating really quickly, and then it's like, okay, now it's slowing down, or slow in the beginning to like work through all the ways of thinking and how we work with each other, and then speeding up because now we're all able to do these things, which is not something that I would have experienced prior to doing that collaborative kind of work across disciplines.
I'd second that, Evan. I would not have thought to put it that way, but yeah, I resonate with that experience. I also think the collaborative work, number one, I think I've always been drawn to it. Always been drawn to it, even as a practitioner, an educator, as a practitioner. And one of the things that I love about it is it just sparks all kinds of creativity and paths for exploration. It is the interdisciplinary teaming has completely shaped my career as a researcher, and I would definitely not want it any other way. At the same and it is often challenging. It's very exciting and it just like keeps you firing on all of your cylinders all the time. And it can also be quite painful in some ways. So I said at the beginning of this session that I'm interested in collaborative uncertainty and navigation. And one of the things that's really high risk in this kinds of interdisciplinary work is probabilistic uncertainty, the probability that you will be misunderstood by your collaborators and that you will misunderstand them is quite high. And so working through, first of all, recognizing those misunderstandings, recognizing they've occurred and figuring out how to go forward with them is a big challenge for me. And also part of the staying curious. And then in terms of like evaluative uncertainty, it's easy to run into differences in value things that you value when you're working cross-disciplinarily. it's easy to think that you're coming to the table with the same interests and values, but that's continually renegotiated and being re-understood as well. And it's a challenge. Worth it, but something you've got to be willing to continue to check and work through.
I was going to say, I think the seed grants are great. And it's when I used to be at the University of Georgia, and we had sort of regular like collaborative grants like this across the arts and I guess education and sort of STEM. But other things that might be, something that would be helpful is like a study in a second discipline type experience where faculty, maybe instead of a sabbatical, you can go and study. I don't know. I'd like to study ceramics in Herberger, but like to really get to have some type of experience in a different discipline instead of just adding it to your normal day-to-day interactions, but to get a little bit of space to go and really see how things are in another school and another discipline could be really cool, if we're like dreaming of other ways to sort of initiate these collaborations, and then these collaborative things would sort of emerge, and I think really neat stuff could happen.
I really like that idea, Nadia, to have a sabbatical as a interdisciplinary residence. It sounds really exciting.
That is a very cool idea. I wanted to call attention to the last question in the chat. I think you guys have all really described well how things have gone, well. You've gotten great ideas, the nice collaborations, but if you could add maybe some challenges that have come from this, or maybe how you figured out the working dynamics among your group, if you could talk a little bit to that, like who does what and how you figure that out.
Talk to each other.
Right.
Sorry, you talk to each other for a long time. Disciplinary ways of knowing are unbelievably powerful. We don't understand most of the time how powerfully blindered our ways of looking at the world are. And they go with, it turns out, disciplinary practices for all sorts of doing stuff and doing all kinds of stuff. And sometimes those are just departmental practices. But we live in our own little bubbles so much that we don't even recognize that we assume that things are going to happen in a certain way, or that a certain question is the right question to ask, and we don't even think about it. And so I don't think I've ever been in an interdisciplinary conversation, and I've been in gazillions of them, that didn't have to start with 6 months of talking to each other before we're sort of even roughly on the same page. About all kinds of stuff, epistemic stuff, everyday practices kind of stuff, et cetera. So it's just, you got to put the time in if you want the collaboration to be meaningful. And it is a challenge, and you got to be aware that things aren't always going to be done the way you've been accustomed to having them done.
Give stimulating moments and a challenge. So for me, the ways that folks outside of my discipline were thinking around agency and futures was different angles than what I was used to, and was super stimulating for me. Really opened up some creative exploration and space to think. In a project recently ongoing with Mirka, thinking in new ways around new materialisms and assemblages in ways that are really stretching me where I've been, and are really opening imaginative spaces of being. And I'm really appreciative of that connection. And then I'll share a challenge that came up was the rate of speed that we were moving was faster than I have moved with doc students in the past. So we did have a situation where one of the students was kind of maybe challenged to move at that rate. And I credit working with Michelle and Steve at that moment of like helping me negotiate what should happen in that role, which I think I would have not had been able to do as well on my own in negotiating that. So having that support to kind of talk through like, okay, what do we do in this situation? How might this work? How do we do this so that everyone feels good about it? And having that sort of feedback sort of outside of my own bubble of like the people who I would normally go to, and my own thinking was amazingly helpful in that moment. And so I think, and that challenge was both brought up by the project and solved by the project. So I think that was a helpful experience to have.
I would like to add to that, and that you talked about the speed, and I see that there is a lot of rhythm. The collaboration, interdisciplinary collaborations have a rhythm, and challenges arise if everybody is not able to adjust to that rhythm, or the rhythm changes, and then how people keep up with their responsibilities. I think that is interesting. So it's time-space related thing, but also coming together at the same time with the same speed, because the project needs to move. Project has its own speed, and it's not necessarily individual speed. So that's interesting.
I think related is also the idea that not a new thing, but partnership's it's rarely 50-50 for any good partnership. A lot of times it can be 90-10, other times it's 10-90. For us, even when we put our NSF proposal together, well, let me put it this way. This hour was kind of framed around research, but when we put our proposal together, I asked Philip, it's like, well, do you have like a Google Scholar profile? He's like, no, but I have an IMDb page. It's like, well, awesome. Yeah, because that's what you bring. We don't do that, but that's you, and that's what we need.
So I see we're getting close to the end of our allocated time. So unless there's anyone else who'd like to add more, this was so incredibly valuable and interesting. Really appreciate all the insights, and clearly these seed grants, we got to keep them up. They seem to be really, really important. So thanks for that feedback too. I'm sure Punya will also be happy to hear that. And Sandy, we need to get together to come up with, next steps for sure. So
do it again.
to do that. Yeah. So again, thank you all. And please take a look at the schedule for next week, the Learning Planet Festival, as well as join us for the Back to the Future of Education research session next week. So, and I think that's it. Corinne, any other last comments? Nope.
No, just thank everybody for their time. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Suren,
much.
Elizabeth.
Yes. Take care. Have a great afternoon and weekend.